Hi there, my name is Jennifer Belyea Ashe. I assume if you're here today, you're wanting to know more about Canada Pension Plan disability and how you may be able to get approved, or maybe it's someone else that you know that is interested in getting approved for this program. So today I'm going to talk about how CPP disability decisions are made and why applications are often denied. Welcome. So, a brief overview. I just want to thank you first for joining the webinar, and just to give you an overview of what I will be discussing. So that'll be how the CPP disability application process works, why many applications are denied the first time, what decision makers rather are looking for, and how to organize your information when applying, which is really important, I believe, in getting your application approved, and also some resources that are included in this webinar. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I believe I said my name is Jennifer Belyea Ashe. I am a disability and health navigator. I have a background in social work and advocacy. I do work as a disability and health navigator, and I like to help people access different systems and different complex health things out there that can be difficult for anyone to get access to. I do have a lot of personal experience in this world. I myself have gone through the CPP disability application process myself when my health became too poor for me to work full time and in my professional realm, which was in social work. And I went through and managed to get that processed and approved the first time through, which is a big achievement, as we'll discuss. And I also, you'll see the picture there from my little guy. His name is Cameron. And I had Cameron in year 2000. He is the reason why I have, well, now I guess almost 26 years experience in this, but I had 24 years experience in complex disability and complex navigation of systems with him. So he was born with a disability. He actually had a few genetic conditions and his needs were great. And he actually stayed small, like he is there. I am saying had in past tense because unfortunately he passed away a while ago from his conditions, and he lived to be 24 years old. So I was able to go through all the pediatric system, and then also when he transitioned from pediatric over to adult, which if you've ever done that or you're going to be doing that, you can understand and appreciate how extremely challenging that can be. And then also from my own experience as an adult with my own health conditions in this world, it's actually quite different when you're advocating for yourself than even for your child. And so I have a lot of experience in that as well. So that's what I'm bringing to you today. I like to look at my experiences with Cameron. It's also my way of giving back. I've become good at navigating these worlds, and it just kind of helps me remember how I got to this and what he's given me and give back, I guess, a little bit in his memory as well. So just a little bit of important information. This webinar is for educational purposes only. It's not legal or medical advice. I do touch on lawyers or legal help briefly. You're still certainly able to do so. You could even take this information to a lawyer. I also don't give medical advice. I give like medical navigation type things. Anything you need for advice or any of your paperwork or anything that is going to go with your application is going to come from your healthcare professionals. Every system or every situation rather is unique. I can't guarantee any outcomes. I can help you to hopefully help you gather your information and put it into your submission process as clearly as possible and try to help with that outcome. You are responsible for the information that you submit in your application. So I'm not submitting that for you. I do offer like a review process, which I talk about at the end of the webinar, so that if you need some help to kind of look things over, or perhaps you've been denied and you have your whole application, what you submitted before, there and can show me, I do offer a very reasonably priced review process if you're interested in that. So I do also say you should consider speaking with a qualified professional if needed, and feel free to bring any of this to them if you would like to review anything. Hey, Jen here. Different background, different me. I forgot somehow to record this slide, so I thought I would just record it and stick it in so you have a chance to actually look at the slide, so it'll stop for you. And it's basically the same information I go over in the next slide, just how important it is to have, my cat's walking behind, how important it is to have that person and the right person to help that experience go smoother for you, and the different things that they can help you with. So I go into that a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to say this as well later. This is just a really important thing to remind you of. And I like to remind you of this early in the webinar because you may become overwhelmed. I'm aware that most of us that have complex physical and mental health conditions, chronic, have what's called brain fog. If you have this, I don't need to explain to you what it is because you're very familiar with what it is. So this can sound like a really overwhelming process. So I'm going to say you can bring someone now as a support person, like even watching this, or I do speak later of the benefits of bringing in a support person. Or I guess I refer to them, a little bit here now as well. So they can help you organize your information, and they can also go to appointments with you. I like to have someone there at appointments so that you can just listen and be the support person rather can just listen and be a scribe. They can also help before you go in at coming up with questions that you may need and help you prioritize. I need this and this answered because, as I know from you looking at this, you probably live in Canada. So most of us have very limited times that we have with our doctors, and therefore we have to really be prioritizing what we go in there for. And they can help you just write things down clearly and just keep you focused on track so you don't lose your wind halfway through this, not even just this webinar, but in this process, because it is a lengthy process. I'm not going to lie, it's lengthy, and I would never ever recommend you doing this alone. I would always recommend you having a support person, and it can make a big world of difference on your ability to get through this and even your approval process. One thing to keep in mind is that this person that you choose is going to have a lot of your personal medical information. So make sure it's someone that you really trust. It could be a healthcare like your spouse. It could be if you're adult children, like if your children are grown. It could be a good friend. It could be someone that you know through the church. It has to be or should be somebody that you really trust with that information. So a better overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover what CPP disability is and who qualifies, and there are specific contribution requirements which you need to have before going forward. We'll also cover how applications are assessed, what the decision makers are looking for, and why applications are denied. We're going to look at how to strengthen your application, communicating your limitations clearly, which is very important, common mistakes to avoid. I do have a simple tool, which really easy, but I stand by it to help you get organized, and how to prepare your information and how to support your doctor effectively. This is an interesting one because often we think of our doctors as supporting us, but this is a lengthy process, and doctors don't necessarily know about all of our health things. So sometimes we have to put together the bits and pieces, maybe from other healthcare professionals, and bring them together and have them in one place so that when you go to your doctor or your nurse practitioner to get the medical report that you need your doctor to fill out in order to access the disability, like to do your application. It's better, and I'll mention that a little bit later, on how to have it all in one place and be able to offer that to your doctor to kind of lead them through that. So yeah, it is a little bit overwhelming, but again, please don't be discouraged. I'm available to look at your applications, or if you were to sit down with someone else, they can certainly probably help you through that. I do have a couple of resources as well that will also be included. Okay, so what is CPP disability? It is a monthly benefit for people who have a severe and prolonged medical condition, are unable to regularly work, and have contributed to the Canada Pension Plan. So that is based on the Service Canada eligibility criteria. Those are the three main points. And then under that, you need to prove those things. It's not necessarily, again, like I said, about your diagnosis alone, it's how it affects your ability to work. So I just want to point out that disability has different definitions as to where it's being used and who is using it, and especially for services and grants and programs that people are trying to apply for. So and even in the world of the government, so this is a government program that they look at. In another pocket, you can apply for what's called the disability tax credit. And that's something that is very helpful on your taxes every year. That is much harder to get approved. And just because you are approved for this pension plan disability does not mean that you will automatically be approved for the disability tax credit. In fact, the criteria are more based on not just your inability to work, but you're really limited with daily functional living. You're really limited with your daily functioning skills. So one would be mobility stuff is in there, and if you have it takes you a really long time dressing, like to the point that it's keeping you from doing things. Also, bladder and bowel health things are in there. There's a few very specific things. And just because you're not eligible for it at the time that now, or maybe even if you get this approved, does not mean that later on you can't apply for it, because your symptoms may worsen, or you may worsen as you age. And then there's another program that's through the Canada Student Loans Program, which is, again, government. And the criteria for that are a little bit different. So they want to know that it's been a long thing, but it doesn't that it's been affecting them for a while in terms of being not able to meet their fulfillment or fulfill their whatever through being a student. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be permanent. And it's just a lot more gentle and easier to access. The really nice thing about this program is they take into account mental health impairments too. So you can put together things for mental health, physical health, which actually the disability pension program does look at as well. But the Canada Student Loan Program, and why I like talking about this, is that it comes with you get a grant every year if if you've been approved for this program, that you don't have to pay back. And then also there is you have the ability to access up to $20,000 per school year on things like a scribe, a tutor, You can get equipment that you need, like maybe you need dictation software or something. Anyway, it is a fantastic program and not enough people know about it. And you don't have to think, oh, I'm disabled. It's actually really not about that. They need to take the disability word out of it. It's really any students that have really um, a lot of physical and mental health conditions, and it's like really difficult for them. It's a really great program. Anyway, before we get into how applications are actually processed, I wanted to go over something that confuses a lot of people when they're looking at the applications. The government has what is called the children's benefit versus the child rearing provision. And so, what that is the children's benefit is a monthly payment and it's paid to you with your other base amount if you have dependent children. You get one amount per child. So if you have 3 children, you get the same times 3. And that's to help with current expenses. The child must be under 18 years of age. The really nice thing about this is that when your child graduates from high school, if they decide to go to post secondary, or even if they delay it and they apply for it, later, as long as they are 18 to 25 years of age and in school, the this benefit that you get every month for helping raise them actually transfers over to them. So they in university or college, they'll actually receive that payment every month. And it's a regular thing. It's really easy to process. There's just one form basically that they have to fill in, and it just verifies that they're going to university. The financial institution gets it, or I think you can print something off online to prove it. And they have to renew it every year. But again, it's just one form. It's very easy. And if your kids are anything like mine and don't get around to it right away, they're kind and they will backdate it. So I have one that got hers right away this year, and another one who's just like, yeah, she doesn't need the money yet, but she will. I know she will. So hopefully they will still backdate it for her when she gets around to doing it. Anyway, the other thing with this is that you can also get stepchildren covered if you can show that you have been involved with their rearing. So, for instance, I thought I'm going to, because my husband works full time, and I thought I'm going to check and see, because I do a lot for these kids, if I can get even half of this approved. Because at the time, and one of our still, she's half and half with us and her mom. But because he was the one working full time, I was more doing like the house management stuff and kind of overseeing. So, if they had like last minute stuff for projects or like grocery items or what, like things that they would need. And I still did a lot of like, I was managing like paying for school stuff, or a lot of like still some medical appointments. Taking them to activities, and I had proof of those things. So that was helpful in me showing like I've done this. And so I did get that approved, and it was actually quite easy to get approved. I was surprised. So that was a nice thing. And now that one of those girls, she's in university, she's been able to take that with her as well and access that the whole time. And then our youngest, who's still at home, when she graduates, she will be able to take that with her as well. So that is essentially my contribution to her education that otherwise, because I'm not working full time, I would not be able to afford to pay. So that's it's super great. The other thing that you'll hear about is the child rearing provision, and that is not a payment. What happens is that comes into consideration this provision when they are looking at whether you're going to get approved or not. And what it does is it looks at, usually for the woman, but could be a father as well, whoever the parent was, if they were to have spent less time in the workforce and they were spending more time raising young kids, they can look at dropping your lower income years, because they look at those income years on how they assess everything. And so for that, you then it can increase your CPP benefit. So it's something that's built in to help the parent who's been raising the children primarily, kind of offset some of that so that they can bring up their payment and not kind of hold them back. So the key difference is one gives you money now and the other protects your future amount. Okay, so CPP disability is not based on your hours worked. Some people think that it is based on how many hours you can work, but that's not actually how it works. So, first thing of all, you have to see if you've had enough contributions. So, typically, they look at your contributions in 4 of the last 6 years. So, if you haven't been working for a while and you don't have those 4 years in 6 years, you probably don't qualify. However, there is another scenario that they have put in. If you're a long-time contributor, so you've contributed for 25 plus years, so I guess you're getting a little bit older and you are at the point where you want to look at applying for this, then they will look at 3 of your past 6 years, and like in order to look at whether you've contributed enough for that. So that would be for long-term people. If you're wondering if you are eligible, you can check your statement of contributions. The easiest way to do it is if you have a My Service Canada account set up with CRA. It's a wonderful, like when you can get that set up. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge for people who aren't necessarily tech savvy, but you could ask someone else to help you get that set up. And then once you're set up with that, you can see so many things in there for all of your tax information, everything. That's just, it's really beneficial. So I would definitely recommend doing that. So you're probably wondering what happens at age 65. The CPP disability plan does not last forever. So this is the beautiful thing. When you turn 65, it's just going to automatically convert over. You don't have to do a new application. It just becomes a regular CPP retirement pension like everyone else's. So there's nothing you need to do. Something to keep in mind is if you're doing your future planning and budgeting and whatnot, sometimes the amount that you will receive for the disability pension plan is different than the regular retirement pension that it becomes. I believe most times, if it's going to vary, it's the regular retirement pension that goes down a bit. So you may want to look at that. Just make sure you know for your future planning what that's going to be, because it most likely will differ a little bit from what you're currently receiving for benefits. So one of the big things about this webinar and that I want to stress and really help you understand is that many CPP disability applications are denied the first time. And I've applied for so many things in 26 years, so many things. I just tell people to expect to be denied the first time. Whatever you're applying for, there's always some kind of thing, and I hate to say it, but there's things that, provincial and federal government set up and they seem like great, but they can be a little bit tricky to access sometimes. And so sometimes you have to represent something. It's not that you're not eligible, it's just that maybe it wasn't clear for why you were eligible. So don't be too discouraged. Expect a no, but you have to reserve some of that energy and push to then work through the next time to get the yes. You do need very good medical documentation in order to describe how you are unable to work, so that it'll be work related limitations. You have to make sure all that medical information is there. It can't be missing or unclear. If they cannot clearly see how the condition or conditions or symptoms meet this requirement, then you're going to automatically get a no. And that's not because that you aren't or shouldn't be eligible, or that you don't meet those criteria and that you can't work. It's that most often it just wasn't displayed in a way that they can clearly understand the functional limitations, and not the functional limitations, but not just your functional daily limitations, like your functional experience or your functional limitations for being able to go out in the workforce. And so, I think I made that point. Yeah. So that would be what? Moving on. I wanted to touch on when to consider a lawyer. I'm not anti-lawyer. I think lawyers are great. A lot of the disability lawyers, like especially if they do this as a regular part of their job, if that's their specialty, they then know what they're looking for, what the criteria are, what they're looking for, and how to present it. And that really is because usually with these cases, they will do it for you without being paid. And then they take their payment on the other end if you get approved. So really, they do want you to get approved because that's the only way that they get paid. So some people choose to work with a disability lawyer. I like to think of trying to get your application put together and really strong the first time, and have everything that really a lawyer couldn't do any better. And so send all that in and see if you get approved. If you don't get approved the first time, you have the second time to include a lawyer as well. And really, you have all this information put together, which would help them as well. So the problem, let's say the problem, but the thing to keep in mind with using a lawyer this way, because I said they'll take the money afterwards. When you get your payment, if you get approved and you get your payment, they will go back, the government will go back and back pay you from a certain time that's been declared, like a certain time after you were determined unable to work, just like a resting period or whatever. So they will go back. So you could actually receive a substantial amount of back pay for however many months or even longer that this is. And so you're not necessarily just giving the lawyers a little bit of money. You could be giving them actually a very big chunk of that back pay. And the people that are needing this money really are the people that aren't working, that are unable to work, and they have had all this back time of, maybe they've accumulated debt. So really, I like to see it go into the pockets of the people that need it, not necessarily to go to the lawyer, which is why I would say if you can put together a really strong case without a lawyer the first time, then you might want to consider it. That's also a reason why when I knew I wanted to do this webinar, and I knew that I wanted to have something that was accessible for people who really don't have a lot of money but needed help doing this. So that's why, sorry, I got pop-ups coming. That's why I really wanted to keep the price of this down, and the price of, if you want the review process, keep that down, just to keep the more money in your pocket, because you're going to need it. But again, I'm not anti-lawyer, and I think some lawyers are really great. I didn't use a lawyer with mine. It took me a lot of time, but I was able to put together everything really well. So it was a strong application. So how our CPP disability applications are assessed? There's two main criteria on how they're assessed. So you must have a severe condition and it must be prolonged. The severe condition is it has to be you have to be able to display that you're unable to work. The prolonged part, it has to be long term and expected to continue indefinitely or result in death. They want, again, all the medical evidence and information, and that should be clearly there so that they can see if you have that. And if you've been out of work for a while and working on this application, you probably, you should be able to get together enough of the information on it being prolonged, like it's not just going to resolve itself, or that it isn't as severe and limiting as it is. So you really want to know what the decision makers are looking for. When they're reviewing your application, they're looking at the medical evidence that supports the condition. They're looking at functional limitations, which I'll detail a little bit more. They want to know your treatment history and attempts to improve the condition. So if you haven't accessed any treatment and you haven't tried to improve the condition, if they feel like there's a chance that maybe that could have been improved, then they're not necessarily going to approve you for it. If you don't have any benefits, which is the case as well, if a lot of people are working and they lose their jobs, try to access anything perhaps that you can that's free of charge or close to free of charge in Canada to try to get some of that information together. So if you have a family doctor and nurse practitioner, anything that you've already had or seen, like if you had anything with like physio or just anything that was oh my goodness, it's my dad, my brother. I don't know how to turn those off when I'm doing this on the computer. Anyway, see if whatever you can get together. Another big one would be counseling, and there are free counseling therapeutic options, and you can discuss your mental health. You can even discuss in there your why it's impacting your inability, or why it's impacting your ability to work. So try to access any of those that you can. I know it's difficult to start grabbing a whole bunch of different therapeutic things when you don't have benefits. I was there. That happened with me. One of the things that was really helpful for me, and I'll just mention this now, is that I knew from reading a lot of like reports and things on this that in order to get the functional, find out how you were unable to meet certain criteria for working, a lot of times they were looking at people like with workplace injuries and things like that. And people with workplace injuries can often get these full assessments done, and they can do a limited a functions test. And some of these were like 2 days long that they do these tests. They test everything. So that would be covered for them. Well, my health stuff didn't come into play that way. It didn't happen that way. So I had to think, how am I going to capture some of these things? So I went to a local place who they actually do a lot of those workers' comp kind of things. And they have like OT with all the fine motor. They do physio. They've got like a whole bunch of different healthcare people under one roof. So I went in and I told them what my problem was. And I said, these are my main things of why I cannot work. And I asked if they could do like a modified one of these to kind of, so they helped me choose which ones would kind of capture some of those things with me. And so we did a modified, and I paid for it. They gave me a decent, but I did pay for it. It was not thousands of dollars like the one that was a couple days would have been. And they actually found things on my um, my small fine motor stuff that I had no idea was even an issue. So yeah, it was very helpful because they could really tell, even with my strength and energy, I would have really good, like, bursts. I could do big bursts of whatever, but I couldn't maintain anything. I had no stamina. I couldn't maintain strength for anything and whatnot. So that was a really hugely impactful piece of um, evidence that I had to go with my application. And it was physiotherapists and occupational therapists, and they're highly regarded in terms of like whether you can or cannot work. So I feel that that was a really huge reason why I was able to get my application approved on the first try. Um, So, yes, obviously getting together all the medical evidence. And again, they're not worried about your diagnosis. They're worried or considering what your um, overall, your long-term condition and why you cannot work. Okay, so looking at medical evidence that strengthens an application. You're going to want as much physical evidence as you can get together or that you have. So, obviously, reports from your family doctor, special reports. So, if you've seen a neurologist, a psychiatrist, rheumatologist, I also used a massage therapist. I had one that had worked with me long term, who she really knew what was going on with my body and how it was impacting me. Um, I did have some chiropractic stuff, also mental health stuff in there. Just anything that you have or that you can get that you can put in. And again, it's a cumulative thing, right? So it's not necessarily this one thing. It could be this, and this, and this. And that's why you have this pain and that and that and that. That's why you can't sleep and you don't have the stamina to do anything and whatnot. So get together everything and anything you possibly can. You can ask for reports. So you can actually go to the hospital if you've had any hospitalizations, or if you've had trips to the emergency room, or even just trips in there in general. Like maybe you're in there all the time for this, and that. You can ask the hospital to print you off medical records. And I do that every year anyway, because I do it for my trips because I claim that on my taxes because I'm able to. That's a whole other webinar I will put together at some point. But yeah, so you can get that from them, but you can get diagnostic tests and investigations. You can ask for them to get you as well. Sometimes it can take you a little bit, and you have to be specific on there as to what you can't just ask for your whole file. I think your whole hospital file. Well, I don't think you can, but I imagine it would be lengthy because they put all kinds of stuff in there. But if there's like specific hospitalizations or tests or yeah, anything from any of those doctors, you can go ahead and ask for all those, and they're really important. And investigations, even if nothing showed up, you can still put those investigations in because obviously it shows that you've been trying to resolve what the problem is and that the healthcare person thought it was serious enough to do an investigation. And they don't just do an investigation unless they agree that there's something worth investigating. Records showing that the conditions been over, I have to shift, been over a long time. Yeah, I would just get together anything and everything you can, and then you can sit down and look at it. But as long as it's relevant, honestly, I would send it. Just organize it well for them so they don't get too confused. Okay, so we talked about functional limitations, and so they're going to be looking heavily at that. They want to know how a condition or your conditions or your symptoms affect your ability to sit, stand, walk, or lift if you have to lift in your job. For instance, I'm having a really difficult time sitting to do this webinar because I have a very difficult time sitting in one position for a long time. I also can't stand in one place for a long time. I do better most honestly, walking a bit so I can shift my body around because my body gets stuck. So they want to look at that. They also want to see anything with your concentration, memory, or cognitive functioning. So brain fog comes in there. We all know what brain fog is. Don't just say you have brain fog, though. You want to say what that is to you, how it affects you. Um, a lot of times, if we have these physical or mental health conditions, our concentration is poor, our memory is poor, because our bodies are working harder to just do everyday things. And sometimes our memory and our concentration takes a hit. And if we have pain, the concentration can take a hit. So there's a lot of things at play that can really impact your cognitive functioning as well. If you have a mental health component to that, such as anxiety or depression or anything else, then that can also affect your cognitive functioning. Stamina and the ability to sustain activity, that myself again would be a good one for. And the other point for reliability and ability to maintain regular attendance. It Even for this webinar, I had to work on my good days around my bad days, find times that I was able to do this and just take my time so I didn't burn myself out. Um, Again, another message from my dad, my brother, talking about their cats. So it took a long time. If I had gone and tried to work as a social worker out in the system, I would not be able to do that because I would not be able to maintain regularly. You have to be sharp to do that because you're really dealing with people's lives and really important things. So I wouldn't have been able to do that with my cognitive functioning. My stamina is really, really poor, and I wouldn't be able to maintain, like, I wouldn't be able to go every day. So those of us who have those things against us, it's really hard to get and keep a job, keep a full-time job or even a part-time job that you have to be there at regular times. Yeah, and the other thing is, many of us, we don't know how we're going to feel day to day. Like, we really don't. We can't predict it. So we might think, oh, it'd be great to do such and such, this week or tomorrow, but we don't necessarily know that. So make sure that you capture that in when you talk about your life, how you really don't know from day to day if you're going to be able to do something. Next, we're going to talk about mental health. So, mental health matters. Your physical or functional, sorry, I keep saying physical, your functional limitations include mental health. A lot of us want to only focus, or people want to only focus on their physical conditions, but there are other things, like I said, anxiety, depression, brain fog, fatigue, overwhelm. Those are all functional limitations as well. So you could have a diagnosis like bipolar condition or obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a form of anxiety. It's an anxiety disorder. And they could absolutely affect your ability to work consistently, reliably, or safely. And maybe that's all you have. Maybe you only have the mental health piece and not the physical. But you don't have to necessarily have a diagnosis. Like, it doesn't have to be you have to have bipolar disorder. Most of us, I would have to say, if we have a chronic physical condition and we can't work, anxiety and depression go with that because it affects a lot. So you don't want to leave that piece out. You definitely want to capture that, like the strain it's had at home, and like you want to capture that as much as you can. So don't minimize it or leave it out because it's very much a part of that. And it's your experience and it matters. Some of the strongest applications include both physical and mental health impacts because that's a reality of how it affects us day to day. We've got the mental health piece as well, and I hear that, like, I validate that for you, and make sure that you're getting that point across in your application, because it's so important. So in order to clearly explain your limitations, you want to explain what your symptoms are that you experience, how those symptoms affect your daily functioning, how long you can perform activities before symptoms worsens. That could be, maybe you had to be on your feet for your job. Maybe you can only be on your feet for 7 minutes. And maybe if you are able to connect with a physiotherapist or occupational therapist, maybe they can help you come up with some of those very functional, measured things such as that, on how long can this person stand up for? How long can they walk? How long can they be at the computer and do this stuff physically? Like how long before it worsens? So you want it to clearly show that. You want to show how consistently you're able to function over time, because as I said, we're not always consistent. Can you be a nurse or a doctor or someone and not know how you're going to be day to day, or not know if you're going to be able to stand up to assist with that surgery when that's what you do, or to be on your feet running around? Like, those are very important things. And if you have medical conditions, you may not be able to do that. So that's really important. You want to capture what you are experiencing and how those symptoms affect your daily functioning. So really, that's the main piece, is not just your symptoms. How do they affect your daily functioning and your ability to work? I know I've said it and I'll say it again because it's super important. You want to help decision makers clearly understand how those symptoms are affecting you. Don't make them guess. Don't make them fill in the blanks on what I have a hard time standing up for a long period of time. Well, maybe you could have it measured by a professional. How long can you stand typically? And how does that impact, like the stuff you can do, even just getting to work? How does that impact you? So I wanted to go over a little bit more what a functional limitation looks like. So instead of just saying, I have chronic pain and fatigue and I can't work, you're not going to get approved with that. So you need to really show as much as you can with documentation. If you've gone to see a pain clinic or whatever, maybe your meds, maybe a med history of stuff too, anything. But you also want to say, I experience daily pain and fatigue that limits my ability to function consistently. I can sit for about 15 to 20 minutes before needing to change position. I'm unable to complete a full workday reliably due to worsening symptoms. So that's much better in terms of kind of putting that in something that they can understand. Just you saying that alone isn't really enough. You need your doctor or physiotherapist or someone to be able to say, yeah, this makes sense. This goes with that. This person cannot do this for more than 20 minutes before needing to change position. Here's another example. So I have anxiety and I struggle to work. You want to expand upon that and say something like, due to anxiety, I experience difficulty concentrating, frequent overwhelm, and panic symptoms. This affects my ability to stay on task, interact with others, and maintain consistent attendance. Don't leave out the mental health piece again. That's really important. So one thing I caution is, don't embellish. You're not embellishing. I am in no way, I don't want people to take advantage of services and things that are there for people who need it. Don't embellish. If you embellish and you get reviewed, it's not going to work out good for you. But be honest and just try to show, like, the best of your ability why this is this way. All right. I'm going to show you my secret special, very simple 3-folder system now for getting your application and your information ready. So the 3-folder system, and I say trust me on this. This is simple. It's helpful to me when I'm used this with other people. They found it easy as well. So what I recommend is that you get 2 file folders and 1 large envelope or 1 large mailing envelope. So already there, I kind of fibbed. It's 2 folders and an envelope. You can go with 3 folders and then get an envelope after, but whatever. 2 file folders and 1 large envelope. So folder 1, you're going to have a working folder. And that is the folder you're going to use probably for a very long time by itself. And that's where you're going to keep all your documents as you collect them in this working folder. And it's going to be yours. You're going to keep it for all eternity, but at some point you're going to make copies in that folder. But this is yours to keep. So you want to get together your blood work, a letter from your counselor, your massage therapist, tests that you had done, hospitalization. Maybe you had something that happened at work. That could be good. If you had something that actually happened at work, not necessarily like making you unable to work with that, but I know as a young person who had passed out at work a few times. And so that was part of like that impact. She's since gone on. She's actually one of the students that I helped set up with that student program. And she's doing great because she took a little bit extra time she needed. And she also has resources. But anyway, she when she was working her job to make her money for school, she passed out a few times at work. Like you can show that, that's fantastic, or something that way. Yeah, so you're going to put all of your information. You might want to, on the outside of the folder, you're going to have a list. So put the list of everything you need to get together, or that you should. So the things from the hospital, you're going to ask them for the whatever, for the trips you had in, whatever. You make your list, you can cross it off as you have it. You're just going to dump all your stuff in there. So that doesn't go anywhere. It's going to become your full copy. And you will always, because you have your own full copy, you'll always have your record of everything. And before I get into the other notes, always keep your record of everything, because you're not sending in anything dishonest, so you should know basically what you sent in, but our brains don't work very well. So if they call you later and start to ask you questions on things or what you put in with your application, you can be like, I don't really know exactly. That was 6 months ago. Like, I don't know what I said or how I said it or whatever. So it's just good if you have to look back or you have to do something with this application, just always I always make copies of anything before I sent them in. And like in the 1 or 2 times, I was like, no, I won't, not this, but something else. Cause I was always having to get something approved that I wouldn't have it. It'd be like, oh, I didn't copy that. And I'd really like to know now, like, when did I send that in? And I didn't have a copy of it. So I was just kicking myself. So make sure you make the copies. Anyway, moving on. Folder 2 is going to be your folder for the doctor / nurse practitioner. Those are the typical people who they want to fill out your medical report, which is part of your application. So you can have the application in there because you should print the application for your doctor. It also comes with the medical report, which goes to your doctor, and they actually mail that in directly. They don't give it back to you. And then I include my completed application in that, and then that stays in that. The reason I include my completed application, I find like where doctors do have such limited time, and how I said before, like sometimes you have to kind of guide them or like show them where it's all there. Because for instance, my family doctor knows a lot about these things with me, but in Canada, we're just so limited on how much time and really how much time they have to research things, right? So she didn't necessarily even have like because there were just things I didn't have the time or wasn't able to talk to her about, but I would talk to my other healthcare people about or whatever. So I gathered everything which was in that application. And then before I mailed it in to Service Canada, I took that application, made a copy of it. I put the full application in that folder, folder number 2, as well as um, the blank medical report and sorry, so it'd be the complete application. So the application form, the medical report that's blank that you put in there for the doctor, but all of the other stuff you included with the form for your completed application, put that into. And then it's really nice because when the doctors sit down to look at it, they can go, oh, this is the entirety of what this person is dealing with. If they have any questions or they're maybe doubting something that's in there, if you have stuff from other people, you can just like they could contact them, right? If they need to talk to like a physiotherapist or whatever, they can ask you. If they don't already have permission, they can contact them and verify that sort of thing. So they'll have that. Like I said, they will then put it whether they want to include any of that other stuff or not, they will send your medical report directly to Service Canada. Now, oftentimes doctors will charge you for filling out, I'm going to say most times, unless they're peds. A lot of doctors will charge you for the time put into filling one of these out because it's a lot longer than it would take to just have a simple appointment. And it anyway, it can cost a lot. So be prepared to pay for a fee from your doctor's office for doing this. You can apply right now. I think it's $85 right now, could change, but there is an amount that you can apply for if you got your doctor to fill the thing out and they charge you for it. You can apply to get, I think it's up to $85 right now, to help compensate for what you would have paid it. But that's just a cost that you want to make sure that you have. And one of the big points with this, so in order to get approval, they need that medical report from your doctor. But you want to not wait for that medical report back. So after you have your whole thing ready, and you can do it at the same time you're taking the stuff to the doctor. So I would say to the doctor, this is all the information I have included in my application for this, and I'm giving it to you so that you can look at it as well. They don't have to send that in. That's just for them. But don't wait for the doctor to send in that report. When they look at your approval process, they look at the date that your application was received, and they will wait for the one from the doctor. So send yours in right away. I think they give you verification that they received it. But then they're waiting for the medical report from the doctor. So don't wait on the doctor. Let me say now, or one of the things that's really important, I think I might bring this up later. You want to know what your date is of your becoming impaired or not able to work. Sometimes it's a really difficult thing for us to know the date. Sometimes it can be easy if, say, you've had an accident and you kind of can look back and say, okay, I've been out of work for all this time, because you can't get approved right away for the disability. So it's going to be like you have the accident. They want to know, can you be rehabilitated? Because that's the goal, right? Like we want to get that functioning back. Can you be rehabilitated to the point where you're going to be able to go back to work? Well, you won't know that in the very beginning. So it's going to be later on. And the healthcare people are going to probably say to you at this point, no, I think that this is actually right. Like this is going to be a limitation that you have to continue dealing with. You're like, okay. So then in that case, I had the accident on this date. So it's very clear on when you're filling out your application what your date is. And your date's really important. It's kind of like when you go through a divorce and you have to figure out what your separation date is. And sometimes that's foggy. It can be foggy because sometimes people think different things, or there was like a back and forth, or you're living in the same house. Like it's not always straight cut. So you each have to know, like, agree on the separation date. If you can agree, that's the best. Anyway, this is really important because this is when your benefits will be backed until. So there's like that date of not being able to work. There's like a waiting period of a month or two. It's a short amount of time, a couple months. And then from that point forward, you can get your benefits if you get them approved, backdated until then. So the date's really important. Don't wait for your doctor. So you're going to mail in your complete application, keep your proof of delivery, and then you're going to keep your working folder because you've made 2 other copies of it. One you've given to the doctor, said, here, do the medical report. I hope you get it in soon, but I already sent mine in, so I'm not waiting. And then the other one is going to go in the mail in your envelope to Service Canada, and you're just going to wait patiently on that. You should write on your folder you kept, this is the date that I submitted. This is the date I dropped everything off for the doctor, and then any updates there. And this is the date that I sent it in. And then you can update the folder after with, on this date, they told me that it's been received and they're processing. And I think they send you a couple things through there. So, my very simple but effective, and you're going to copy. You got to copy everything. There's some money to photocopying, especially if you're photocopying a lot, which you may be depending on what you get from the doctors. Yeah. Copy. I think I went over all these details. This is just helping your doctor clearly understand your situation, because they often don't. Again, they just don't have enough time to spend with you and to understand how they don't know how stuff impacts you in your daily life. They can't. So that's why you're giving them clear, organized information, and they are going to understand by looking at that. So you should go back to this before you give the information to your doctor and say, have you put in all your medical history? Are they going to be able to read it and understand how the condition's affecting your daily functioning? If not, then the people looking at your application will not either, the adjudicators, and how your symptoms impact you over time, important details that may come up. Ideally, there would be stuff from what you give to your doctor that they would actually go, oh, and like learn something from that. Because like I said, they don't do everything or know everything. I do have a few tips before you start. I recommend doing the application in parts. If you can get this all done at once, I would say you probably haven't done enough working on it. And like I said, it's tiring. It's really exhausting. So do it in parts. Choose your work date carefully. I already went over why that is important. Don't do this alone. Again, that's back to your support person. Get a support person. It's so hard. It's confusing and it's hard, and it's easy to give up when you're exhausted and you're like, and this funny thing is, those are the people that need it the most that give up because they just can't. Because that's kind of the point of it, right? Like, if it had been simple for me to sit down and do this webinar in a workday, then I wouldn't be in such a way that I'd be unable to work. Like, if you can sit down and do this application in a day or in an afternoon or whatever, like, our brains are suffering. Our bodies and our brains are suffering. You need to do it in parts. It's just really overwhelming. So don't do this alone. Please find somebody that you can do this with. Take care of your mental health. I really believe that anyone who suffers from anything physical, chronically, physical pain, any type of disability, it affects your mental health. I don't know. You can't convince me otherwise. You could be anxiety or depression affect a lot of people. There's a whole grieving process, which a lot of people don't understand. But when you think about when you're not able to work, you have lost income, which is huge. That's one of the biggest worriers is financial for adults. So you've lost income. Um, you have to deal with that with your spouse, right? You don't know what your future holds for anything financial. Your career or your job, it gives us a lot of um, it gives us a lot of sense of self a lot of times. So losing that means you lost a big piece of that. Um, I went to university for a very, very long time. I was never expecting to not work. I put a lot into that. So that was really hard. Your family dynamics. So if you have a partner, um, if you have a loss of like physical things as well, like your partner's role can completely change if you become disabled. So they may have to take on more of the responsibilities. They also have more of the financial burden and things on them. They may become more of a caregiver to you. Like that is really complex what happens within a relationship on there. And I'm just trying to think. It's just it, there's a lot. Your independence, probably your ability to go out and do social things or be with friends. Like it's harder to manage that when you have chronic conditions. It's harder to do that when you have lots of income and you can't afford to do those extra things. So be really honest about that. Be really honest about the hard days and the the mental health part of that. I really struggled when I went through mine because again, I said I was never expecting to not work, and I really got a lot of that fulfillment out of that because I wanted to help people. So I struggled a lot, and I found it was really helpful to go to a counselor and just talk those things out was very good. And I managed to find one at the times I wasn't working that was covered, that was under a covered program. So that's a big tip. Copy, 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 3-folder system, copy, copy. Make sure you focus on your functional limitations, not just your diagnosis. I already talked about that, but that's really important. Be honest about your hardest days. Absolutely. Don't embellish. Don't make up stuff that's not really there, but be honest about your hardest days. So, just wanted to say you've got this. It's just one step at a time. It's not going to be simple and done the next day. So, you need to be lenient and kind to yourself in this process. I know it can feel like a lot, and you're just going to focus on the next step, one step at a time. I do have some things that I've put together, resources to help, or tools that I've put together to help with your application process. And so I've included a few printable tools. One is a doctor visit summary sheet so you can prep for your appointments and track your symptoms, etc. There's also a functional limitations worksheet that has prompts and stuff on it. Also, a symptom tracking sheet that you can track all your symptoms and everything on. I do, as I had said, I do offer a guided review process, which is very affordable. The link is there if you're interested. Again, I want to make this affordable so everyone who can and should be able to access this can. So that's why I kept it as such. You don't have to do everything yourself. There are people out there. If it's not me, there are other people, but I do have this option if that's seems like to be a good fit for you. And we can just identify gaps and things like that on how things are presented. That's what I like to do, is just look at that application as a whole. And even without me knowing a lot about your medical history, can I tell from that where the gaps are? Can I understand how is this affecting you because I don't know you, first of all, as a person. So, how is this affecting you? If I look with fresh eyes at this application, and I'm pretty good at finding those spots where we could kind of beef that up a little bit and make that part a little stronger. So, I would like to thank you very much for attending the webinar. I'm really happy to be able to put this out there for people. Again, I do this in part because of memory of my son, and I just find it really fulfilling, or I don't know, it's just part of my to help people find this and hopefully give them some hope and some understanding as to what they're going through. So I hope this was very helpful to you, and I'm available if you want to chat. Have a good day.